we don't really know what a dream is and what a dream does. But we do know a lot from our experience. So dreams are worlds we find ourselves in during sleep, in which we even don't know that we're in the dream unless we're lucid, and we have an experience, and then we wake up and we're in a different world where we have exactly the same experience. We're interacting, our mind is somewhat awake, and then we go to bed again and we're in a different world. So we're living in these different worlds.
Welcome back to another edition here on Mentory TV, usually termed From Crisis to Creation. But today I thought, why not talk about something that we all do, consciously sometimes, but most of the time subconsciously, and that is dreaming. Have you ever been fascinated by your own dreams? Have you ever been frustrated by your dreams, i.e. you can't even remember them? Or are you scared of falling asleep because you might end up with nightmares? Are you so-called a victim of your dreams? Or do you think you can actually do something with your dreams? The other side, the dark side maybe, of our conscience. So there's many, many questions I have about dreams. I'm so super curious because I'm one of those fruit flies that dreams and enjoys the dream. And the moment I wake up, I go like, what was that all about? I don't remember anything most of the time. So when I came across this book, Dream Guidance, Connecting to the Soul Through Dream Incubation by Machiel Klerk, I thought, I need to grab that man for you, speak to him about this fantastic book, invite him to the show. Machiel, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you for having me, Patricia, and it's a pleasure to be here with you.
2 words on you, Machiel. You are a social entrepreneur, licensed mental health therapist, international speaker, and of course, a published author. And what I think is really super interesting, you are actually inspired by C.G. Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, who comes from here where I sit, which is Zurich, Switzerland, a Swiss psychoanalyst, psychotherapist, and he is quite a bit somebody that influenced you and also your current work, which is the Jung Platform. But we'll talk about that a little later. First of all, to your book, you know what I liked about this? It wasn't, I think, for me, it was most importantly a tool, a manual, something that I could read pretty much in an evening, let it settle, and start using the next day. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, how do you define dreams? What are dreams if not just detoxing your mind from all those experiences we had during the day?
Well, that's really a great question. And there are many angles to look at it. What I would want to propose is maybe we could start with what the experience of dream actually is.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So how does it, first of all, feel in order to define it? Love it.
Right. And so take go back to a dream you maybe recently had, or a dream that was really intense. And that's the same for everyone that listens or watches, because then you can follow along. So if you go back to that dream, one of the first things that you probably will notice is that you are in an environment, you are in a world, and you are there, and maybe there is some other, usually there is, whether it's the cab driver or the alligator, someone is there, and you're having an interaction. Maybe the cab driver yells and you yell back, or you run away. You're having an interaction in this world. So from an experiential level, a dream is a world we find ourselves in during sleep, in which we have out of that, we can distillate a couple of features about what a dream really is. 1, you're in an environment. 2, actually, your mind is awake, but not really aware that it is in a dream state. because you know the cab driver is yelling and you are interacting, and you're interacting in that world. And that is so important because, especially in our Western traditions, a dream often has been thought as kind of a letter sent from mystery source X to you that needs to be deciphered. But the letter metaphor is really deceptive because you're in a world having an experience, and a letter is really two-dimensional. And so it's a co-created world you're in. So this is first little outline of the experience we have, because we don't really know what a dream is and what a dream does. But we do know a lot from our experience. So dreams are worlds we find ourselves in during sleep, in which we even don't know that we're in the dream unless we're lucid, and we have an experience, and then we wake up, and then we're in a different world where we have exactly the same experience. We're interacting, our mind is somewhat awake, and then we go to bed again and we're in a different world. So we're living in these different worlds, and that's the first.
Yeah, no, but I love this, that you actually straight away start with a concept that we are more than our consciousness. We are more than what we live through the day, which we experience through our five senses.
That's right. And actually, we continue to live at night, and our mind is strangely enough awake, because we do know we do all these things. It's just not aware. We don't know we're in the world of dream. And because our short-term memory doesn't function at night, we forget hours. We probably have 2-3 hours of dreaming. We forget all those hours of sleep, of dreaming, when we wake up. But we have a whole other life next to this life.
Yeah, and I love it. You know what I liked about your book, and also a couple of comments you made. I always got the impression, Machiel, that you see that other life as a friend, as a wiser being, as something that disengages the shoulds, the should nots, everything that we call socialization. And all of a sudden, maybe accesses really what you call here the soul, our authenticity, and what really should be going on. So what would you say in your own experience and also with your clients, you actually say is the real job, responsibility of that dream world?
Well, what the dream does is our own psyche seems to stream towards a certain end. And let's say we're a river that is moving towards the ocean. So there's a movement going on. And this movement is towards greater wholeness or the realization of our own potential. We come into the world with gifts and wounds that manifest themselves throughout the day. And at night in the dream, we can see what our woundings are, but also where and how the innate nature of the dream and the psyche is, how it tries to heal that, and also how it tries to help us deliver our gift to community. And that is why dreams are so helpful. They're a psychological x-ray on where we are and how the stream of life is moving.
Yeah, and I think that is so important to have that consciousness that actually dream can be a tool for yourself. And this is where your story in the beginning, as I understand, your deeper interest in dreams and working with dreams actually comes from, is wounds or certain, maybe even traumas, but some painful experiences that needed overcoming somehow. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes, in my own life, I lost my dad at the age of when I was 10, and I had a great relationship with my father. So this was a massive heartbreak. And my culture, the Northern Protestant Dutch culture, wasn't overly favorable to emotional life. And my family couldn't deal well with it, not out of maliciousness, but just I didn't have the skills. And so I had unresolved heartbreak that led in my early 20s to me living in the pit, in the depths of the depression, and didn't know what to do, no sense of purpose, lack of meaning.
Mm.
And in the depths of this pit, I stumbled upon the works of Carl Jung, which gave me clues on how to read dreams. And then dreams became the lifeline out of the pit. It started to show where I was stuck and unhelpful behavior I was engaged in, but also where it was trying to stream towards. And by aligning with the stream of life, I got back in the flow and excitement, and my gosh, life opened up.
Yeah, all of a sudden you started living. But let me just go a little bit deeper in what you said. So that basically through your search for helping yourself, okay, you stumbled over the work of Carl Gustav Jung, which then opened the key to, okay, I may look for answers within my dream world. My question is, we do have dreams if we want it or not. It's just a part of fact, if we know that we could even work with them or not, they happen to us. I find those few dreams that I actually remember, and I would like to ask you why that is, okay, apart from me being blonde, with all due respect to all the blondes out there, is that, why? I mean, after traumatic experience, we tend to have traumatic dreams sometimes. I mean, my mom last year passed, and I'm so happy because she appears in my dreams, and she tells me things that I don't know how to take. There's one dream she came and was standing in the bathroom getting ready for the day, and all of a sudden she comes into the bathroom and just stands next to me and just says, just stop it. Just stop it. And I'm like, what, putting my makeup on? It is a really silly experience, but I remember that fragment of the dream. Now, long story short, you having had that terrible loss with your dad, this torment must have also been in the other life, in the shadow life, during your dreams, but you were not able unless you had certain tools to really tap into them and use them for healing.
Yeah, that is right. There's an innate healing function in dreams that can heal us, and that works somewhat autonomous by itself, but it works much better when we engage with it. So a certain engagement, relationship, awareness allows the healing quality in dreams to really flourish. Not unlike if we have a wound on our arm, if we tend to it and just clean it and put the water on it, the arm, the hand, the wound itself will heal itself. And it's the same with these traumatic events, and especially in dreams, you see, the psyche will heal itself, and does that much better when we proactively spend time with it, engage with it, and then it will heal on our behalf.
Exactly, and this is what I loved about your book. Let's talk then a little bit in depth about a real approach, a process where you can, first of all, you have to be open to it, work with your dream world. Take us through what it really needs, and then we try to get a little bit deeper into each one of these steps.
Well, there are the way that I propose in the book is I say we very often, a lot of people have experienced some helpful dream. And there are many examples of people having a creative gift, or in my own life, I had helpful dreams. And Paul McCartney got that song yesterday out of a dream. And even business inventions and Nobel Prizes have all been shown in dreams. So dreams have the ability to provide really creative insights or healing, and it does that spontaneous. However, we don't need to wait for this spontaneous delivery to come to us. We can turn towards the dream and proactively ask the dream a question before we go to bed, in order to trigger a helpful response. So that is basically the method I propose. And anyone can try it if they're watching this tonight. You don't have to have ever had a dream. You don't need to be interested before this in dreams. This kind of wise inner counselor is on standby, ready to help. And a lot of traditions talk about ask and you shall be given. And it is actually ask better questions and you get better answers. We can talk about that. But there's this creative intelligence that is interested in helping and educating. And I can give an example of how to do this, but there's this 5-step method of on how to do that.
Yes. And I think that is really exactly what is so helpful, because if you believe it or not, and I have read your book during the summer, and of course I tried it. I don't want to say I'm a master yet, but it's actually quite interesting that I tried it, and the first night I did it, I was like, whoa, blown away. I started my journal, writing it all down, not only what happened, but my emotions, and then my interpretation. Great. Second day, same thing. Third day, void. There was nothing, you know. And the interesting thing, I think, what you start with is how to really construct. There's a system to construct the right question to ask your dream world, your higher self, your intuition, your soul, whatever you want to call that other maybe partner on the other side. And that is awfully important, that one has to be actually quite granular about how to go about it, be it choosing what you want to ask, how to word it, etc.
Totally right. What seems to be the case is that on the other side we have this wise friend, and but it's also a very astute coach or therapist or friend, and that wants us to live life, engage with life, and do our best. And once we get stuck on a question that's really relevant to our life, then we can reach out. But it doesn't want us to reach out too quickly, too early, about questions that aren't relevant to our path. So to do this method, it really starts with first identifying the right question. And I think we all live multiple questions, some big ones and some small ones that arrive during the day. So people could ask themselves right now, what is a question that is alive in me? And it could be as, how do I find a partner? How do I grow my business? Or what's going on between me and my colleague? Or how can I love myself more deeply? Or what's the one type of food I could eat? These are all really questions that are relevant to one's life. And studies at Harvard on this technique also showed that questions that are of medical nature, of emotional nature, do provide really great answers. Too conceptual, too abstract, or not relevant to your life path, the dream seems not to be interested in helping.
Okay, that's an interesting one. You gotta you have to cater for the other side as well. You cannot just come, okay, I really want to know this, lottery numbers, whatever. But I think what would be nice, I know you have a good example, so people can really take from our conversation here, okay, this is, let's say, a subject that one life experience of yours, a client maybe discussed with you, and how you work through it. Do you want to take us through that?
Yes. Recently, there was this man who had come out of a divorce, was divorced for a year, and went back in the dating life. So he noticed that it didn't really flow that well for him, and he came to me and said, "Can I ask a question to the dream about how can I find a partner?" And I said, "Yes, if that is something that's in your heart and is relevant to your life, then this mystery friend loves to help." And so he first identified this is a heartfelt question. Then he went to the second step, and that is phrase the question well. And he thought about it, and first, after a bit of pondering, he thought, yeah, I want to find this partner. But what I probably really want to know is, what is my biggest obstacle in dating? Because if I can solve that obstacle, I probably will be able to find a partner.
Okay.
And so he what he did, he phrased it that way, and the great way in how he did in phrasing that is he asked one question at a time. So it's not what are my obstacles. He asked, what is my biggest obstacle that hinders me right now? and that made it really helpful, because the dream is strangely a bit of a stickler when it comes down to phrasing it the right way, because it just responds to what you ask. If you ask multiple obstacles, it will show multiple obstacles. If you ask what blocks me and how can I overcome it, you start already infusing two questions in one, and it will be later on much more difficult to understand the dream
So
answer.
focus in your question.
Focus.
Even though you might have three questions about the same sujet, try to even split it up, and go for one a night.
Yeah, and hopefully there will be many more nights. So then you'll ask a week, a day, or a week later the next question. So this man wrote a dream. What is my biggest obstacle that hinders me right now? Then step 3 is engage in a ritual. And with a ritual, I really mean set the intention. Treat the other side as a partner.
Mm.
And just as if you would literally be visiting this wise counselor that knows about your life, and talk to it in that way. So he said, "Great friend, I'm stuck. I would love to find a partner. It would make my life so much more fun, and I would love to develop a sense of loving qualities in me, and sharing this with other people." So he made the question also a bit generous that way. It was not just give this to me, but if I have this, I can be more loving to others as well. And somehow the great friend seems to be favorable to a more generous intention. Yet the whole thing with the ritual is spend some time, treat it with respect, talk to the other, to the great friend. This person made a drawing of a heart, put a question mark on it, wrote on that piece of paper, light a candle, did a prayer, people can dance, whatever comes up spontaneously that engages the other side. And then he repeated that a couple of times throughout the night. And then step 4, he went to bed. And in bed, you want to just meditate on it briefly, 1 minute, 2 minutes before you fall asleep. It seems to be a very opportune time to set the intention for the night to come. He slept and dreamt. And then step 5 is, upon waking, immediately write down your dream. Because if you don't write it down, the chance that it evaporates, it's so common. And so you write down the dream, even if you think, oh, this has nothing to do with my answer, I don't get this, doesn't matter. Write it down, your feelings about it, and then puzzle. So I see that half of the time the dream makes a lot of sense, and the other half of the time the answer comes from a different angle that people haven't thought about, so they don't see it right away, and they need to puzzle a little bit on it.
Yeah, and there are now quite a few layers we need to uncover a bit. First of all, the ritual. That really intrigued me, the ritual, because to me it seemed the way you write it that you are really honoring already the other side. You're actually recognizing them and kind of setting up your own aperture. And I thought that the ritual, whilst indicating the endorsement of the other side and whatever message or answer may come, it actually is very helpful in priming yourself. You prime yourself to be open-minded, to set that intention, put it somehow into something, physical, which means engagement, also emotional engagement. And then you have a different type of expectation. And then, there's study over study that if you have one mindset with one expectation, the likelihood of that expectation to actually realize is exactly that. So if I expect I will succeed at some point with something that I focus on, then guess what? Your chances of doing so are much higher than if you go like, okay, I'll do it, but I know I'm going to fail. So this ritual, are there a couple of, aspects that need to be included, or is it really something that whatever is good for me is good for the dream and the outcome?
I love the way you approach it and some of the insights you bring to it, like that expectation. Indeed, pumping up the expectation, putting pressure on that ritual, or putting pressure on anything, creates a reality, creates the next reality. So without going in too much background detail, but the same thing applies to the placebo.
Yeah.
And in a certain way, it's a placebo phenomenon, and placebos work. So it's not placebo is fake. No, placebos work, but not because of the ritual of the substance, but because of the pressure on the expectation, intention, etc. So I love that part. That is why you really want to spend time on it, and focus time, and energetic time, because that makes the method successful. I've studied all these traditions. It comes back in Hinduism, Buddhism, African shamanism, Western psychology, where people did this, and they all have the ritual element in it. But in this tradition, you need to drink milk. In that tradition, you need to sleep next to a stone, and it doesn't matter which ritual you do, but that you do a ritual with the ingredients of emotion, expectation, desire, honesty, respect. Those are the emotional ingredients that makes this successful.
Yeah. And I for myself, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I boiled it down to I'm getting myself into a certain energetic frequency. Okay. And I don't know if you've read this fabulous book, and I'm holding it up not to make any kind of advertisement, but The Afterlife Frequency from Mark Anthony. I don't know if you've seen that interview on Mentored TV. And he really speaks about it. At the end of the day, the afterlife, our ancestors, it's about energy. So the way you go into bed with what kind of energy, does also prime you for some things, but also for the dream world. And it comes it comes in very, very handy if you have that energy, the right intention to then also not only have that dream, but hear the dream. Because that's, and I would like you to explain it a bit more, because one thing is to dream, and you can even remember it, you write it down, but you're not hearing the message. And one thing is interpretation. The other thing is you might not like what you've dreamt. Tell us a little bit about maybe this dissonance between I went into the dream with certain intentions, with certain energies, and then I get like something totally different back.
I love you weave in so many interesting elements that I want to also talk for a second about. Yes, indeed, it puts you in this frequency that you're more likely to be attuned to sending out and getting in the healing dream. And if we follow Jung, Carl Jung, he said the unconscious is the world of the dead. So the world of the dead is the other world. They seem to also live in the dream world, and the afterlife is in the here and now. The afterlife is here. It's just in this way of thinking, and world that coexists next to this world. Just like the dream world doesn't disappear when you wake up, the dream world continues to be coexisting. And it is somewhat about merging these two worlds so that you get into the flow of life in a different frequency. So that was when I want to respond to that.
Yeah, super. No, super interesting. Yeah.
And then indeed we need to engage with it, and part of that engagement also involves, don't make it too serious. Because I've seen that people, this is really important. I need to stick to these steps. Actually, life and the other side is a playful element to it, and if you press it too much with seriousness, to get in that frequency becomes more difficult. So playfulness is an element as well. And then I must say, I forgot the other part where you...
Okay, sorry, yeah, I'm mixing it all together. You see, women have the spaghetti brain, okay? I'm going to stay in the boxes of the male brain, okay? Let's talk about the box of interpreting your dreams. Because everything when I talk to skeptics about it, they of course say, well, it's all up to your own interpretation and you can make of it what you want. And certainly it is us. It is the other side of us, or the subconscious of us. However, don't we know that 90% of whatever our conscious behavior is, we think maybe from the prefrontal cortex, but no, it is actually driven by a much, deeper part of the brain, or our experiences, or our subconscious. And this is what also C.G. Jung talks about, the collective consciousness, but which derives actually from the individual unconsciousness.
Yes. So a dream is a combination between, is built up out of your own beliefs and expectations, intention, and a mystery factor X, which we call the collective unconscious of Jung, or the soul, or the larger awareness. So if you if we would take a dream, let's say this was a dream, and I start thinking, gosh, I'm mumbling, I'm not explaining it well, and at once my former boss comes in and starts shaking his head, and then we take that as a dream, and we would ask the question, what do you associate to this former boss? And I would say criticalness. So criticalness in my dream takes on the form and shape of my former boss, because I associate that to criticalness. So these feelings take on a form. And in my case, it's my former boss, and another person, it is their mom or dad or their uncle. And so that's the individual element of a dream. And you get usually to that is, what do you associate to that? That strips away the skin and comes to the emotion behind it. And then beyond that are also characters that seem to possess a consciousness of their own, or there's an intelligence of their own that cannot be explained by our habitual self. There's something larger than us that co-creates the dream world, that brings that does the healing, brings the creative ideas, or the new piece of music. So a dream is both personal and collective, and therefore when people say those dream books, they don't really make sense.
Yeah,
that's still a big extent true, because we have personal elements for which you need to know the dreamer, and you have collective elements that where you can probably make something of us, the sense of going on a journey, coming home, big what Jung would call archetypal experiences.
Yes, and the archetypal experiences is actually it's very, very interesting phenomenon. I don't know whether we'll have time to delve into this, but this is where it really all derives from, which then these kind of elements really drive who we are and how we see the world very strongly. Now, coming back to interpreting your dreams, would you say that it is actually good to have a sounding board for your dreams, somebody that may help you in the interpretation? Because you just mentioned something really important. So in my dream, I ask a certain question about my own behavior. In my dream appears my boss that goes, so you now know, because it's your boss and your individual relationship to him, that he is critical maybe towards any of the employees, that his appearance symbolizes in your dream something that is to be overlooked in a critical way. But not everybody, do we all have, let's say, here my mom comes, she stands for whatever, then my father, my work colleague. I don't really know if I would have for each individual appearance, and maybe sometimes there are people that I don't know, a certain, let's say, symbolism or even job or expression. If they appear, that means critical. It means lovely. It means, whatever.
Yeah. You can always ask the question, what do I associate to this figure, or to this, or the other question one can ask is, what is the function of? Like a car, what's the function of a car? Car brings me from A to B, it moves me through life. My way of moving through life and I cannot get to the brakes, or when I push the brakes, I don't slow down. Oh, in my way of moving through life, I seem to have problems slowing down even when I try to. And then it's, where do I see this in my life? And so those two questions can get a person pretty far. In my book, I offer another method that's really aimed for people. If you've never worked with dreams, you don't need to go into the symbolism.
Yeah.
You can ask the question, instead of what does this mean, ask the question, what is happening?
Yeah.
And I can explain it by that man that asked for
the love. He wants to be back in the game.
Yes. And so he had a dream in which he was driving in a car through a tunnel, and he says, I think I see a mountain lion. If I come closer, it's a tiger. It's beautiful, but I'm get really scared. I slam my brakes and I back out. So he writes it down. He doesn't immediately get it, and asks the question, what is happening? He says, oh, I'm moving through life. And when I move through life, when I see something that is really beautiful, I get really scared. And when I get really scared, I back out. And then it is against the question, what's my biggest obstacle in dating life? It's like, oh, when I get close to a person that I find beautiful, that is intriguing, I get scared and I back out. Well, that is very helpful for him to know, because then he can work on how can he sustain the fear of being close or intimate or approaching a beautiful person.
Absolutely. And I love that, because that actually opens another can of potential worms, because it gets him closer to his maybe very innate fears due to whatever experiences he had previously.
Yes. So it links back to all these experiences that how he dealt with fear. It brings him to the common experience that is, if you go after what you really love, it triggers fear. And of course, in our romantic notion, oh, the person you love, it's all easy and fun. Well, the person you fall in love with initially also triggers a lot of fear, because what if they reject you? What if they don't like you? What if they judge you? That takes on tremendous power, and we're afraid for that. And there's no way around being afraid for that. The way is, how can I sustain the fear of approaching a beautiful person? And how can I sustain the fear of becoming vulnerable and showing who I really am, with the possibility that they will judge me? And you can also then again ask your dream, how can I sustain that fear? And then your dream will help you in the next steps of your journey.
That I find very interesting, because with one question and an answer, you actually have to pose another question to kind of follow through what the answer may be. And following your example there, Machiel, it makes me think of self-approval, self-love in a way. We are all vulnerable, but if you kind of have a certain level of confidence, going, yeah, I'm vulnerable, yeah, I'm opening up my emotions, and yeah, I can get hurt, so what, kind of thing. At some point it's worth the game of maybe trying and being hurt, rather than being frustrated and alone, which I think is extremely deep for a very simple, well, if you have a problem, just ask your dream. So you can really go very, very granular with one question and answer leading to the next question and answer.
Yes, and it really can set a person up for a journey of a lifetime, in which you explore all these topics, and which you can ask questions such as you propose of, how can I love myself? How can I be vulnerable? How can I risk this? How can I deal with being alone? And then you're really engaged with life on such a deep level that gives also a lot of purpose, a lot of meaning. And sure, it's not always easy or enjoyable, but my gosh, you will feel alive. And
yeah,
that's
exactly. I like it, because a lot of people are scared just about the idea, and if they say, oh my God, it's actually the death that or death, that really kind of the ancestry that does play a big part in our dream world. That's already super scary. And then finding something else out about yourself is even scarier, because again, you have to deal with it. Then let's just talk a little bit about the totally normal questions one would ask. So if I think about dreaming, I'm asking myself, why do we have nightmares?
Nightmares are anxiety dreams. And usually it is because we have too much or too little anxiety. The too little is a little bit less frequent, but it could be that we're in a dangerous situation that we're naive about, and we don't know. Let's say I'm hanging out with this person, and I think it's all nice and well, but my soul already knows this is a psychopath, or this person will steal from you, or it's not a good person. I might have a nightmare that warns me that I'm naive, and that I need to be more in touch with reality. And so nightmare is really an alarm system that goes off. And we're best off listening to the alarm system, because even nightmares come in the service of helping you. The larger self is aimed at helping you become you. It's just its nature. It's like the river flows to the ocean, not because it's just or good. It's just what it is. And the great friend wants you to be you and not being slaughtered by something.
You know what?
So,
Yeah, sorry, Ed. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, because as you speak and I hear you, what strikes me is how, counterintuitive it is to think that actually the dreaming is your way to awaken.
That's it. And that's the really the big step beyond dreaming, is that dreams helps you to become more aware. And in for example, the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, dreaming as a way of becoming more aware is seen as one of the 6 paths to enlightenment. And then you get in what's called dream yoga, and then it really becomes an awareness practice.
Fantastic systems, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the other part of the nightmare is that, of course, the nightmares are scary. We don't want to have them. So I hear that question a lot. How do I get rid of it? Well, getting rid of it is usually getting towards it. It's either it's the alarm system that goes off. You have not enough fear. It tells you, hey, and it's really helpful. Or it shows you that you're too anxious. You're running around again trying to find a class for your test, and you can't find it. And you're wake up, and then it just suggests, hey, you're overly stressed. You're making you experience it bigger than it is. If you slow down and calm down, you'll be better equipped to deal with it. So it shows when stress becomes too high, and then there are certain techniques to bring the stress down. And in a certain sense, you see it also with trauma. Trauma will create nightmares, and initially the nightmare will be very identical to the event. Mm-hmm. And if it has been digested a little bit, it starts taking more symbolic form. So let's say first it is uncle who climbs into the bedroom of this person to do something bad, and then later on it becomes a wolf. And then you see how the dream is digesting this experience, but by turning towards it and working with the nightmare will change and will go away over time. If you medicate that, the nightmare will still operate its anxiety just so, but you don't really feel it. But the wound actually festers, and so you remain in trouble in a certain way.
Yeah, it festers and you petrify, literally. Yeah. No, what makes me think, because my next question, but you answered it between the lines, if I continue thinking alongside your thought, is reoccurring dreams. Yeah. And, because nightmares can get to the point where they are so painful that you don't want to fall asleep again. after waking up in that whatever, yeah, or you are scared to even go to bed the next day because it comes. But this reoccurrence is just knocking at the door. Hear me, see me, act on me, right?
Yeah, totally true. That what we repress becomes bigger and bigger, and this method can even help people with nightmares. You turn towards the dream and say, "Gosh, dream, I've been really afraid recently, and you've scared me. Yet I heard this guy talk with Patricia about nightmares, so I'm gonna experiment, and maybe you can help me, dream friend, to deal with this." And you can ask a question as, "What is one thing I can do to deal with this nightmare?" And then the dream will give you a prescription, or what could I do different? And then you can get a dream for that. And usually these things are not solved with one question, just like the dating journey is really a journey, and not a one-time fix issue. Uh, but you can work through your dreams, of through your nightmares, by engaging it, asking it questions, take some time to work on it, and then ask the next question.
Yeah, and I think it is so helpful what you say. And I'm going to share one of my nightmares. And luckily, it did not come too often, but it did come exactly the same way. And it's not really that I'm seeing a dream, but I'm feeling a weight. Okay, so I'm sleeping, and then the dream is that some weight is like on me, to the extent where I have to wake up to breathe again. So it's total oppression, but I know it is, I don't want to say, a ghost or a being, whatever, but it is actual material, electromagnetic weight that is on me. And that unless I really kind of go, oh, and I'd wake up because I'm moving physically my arms to kind of push this off me to breathe again. This is the moment that I wake up. And I had that dream a couple of times after my mom passed. One can say, okay, it could have been that and that. But I think, looking at it, maybe because, when your mom passes and you had it with your dad, somehow the perspective of what your role in life is, the perspective of your own responsibilities now towards the family maybe changes. And it could be, first of all, oh my God, kind of a weight. But I did not have your method, and I didn't really look into it, but I endorsed it because I said, no, I'm not going to be scared. Okay, you're going to have, you've got a workout training during the night. Yeah, good night gym. Not really the kind of gym you want. But that was one of my dreams, which I thought was quite interesting. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, one thing is nightmares. The other thing, reoccurring dreams. The other thing is, everybody seems to have a few dreams that are exactly the same. Like, you want to fly, you can't. You want to run away, you're like in this, and you can't. Somebody, you're trying to run away and you can, but somebody is kind of getting your leg. What is this all about? Why do we share certain dreams?
It seems that we share certain experiences in life, such as coming home, going on a journey, maybe wanting to run and feel, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, or I want to talk and the words don't come out, or I want to fly, and those seem to be experiences that we all share all around the world, because those dreams come back indeed in the Western culture, but I've been in Africa and in Asia, and they have the same dreams.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what, it's totally culture agnostic, age agnostic, race, whatever. It's
right.
As long as you're human, you can dream, you may share that.
Yes, and it seems to express common themes that we have. And that's very close to what Jung would call these archetypes.
Archetypes, yeah.
Core structures that we all have. And that's why in these mythologies, you also have these repetitive themes like trust and betrayal, competition, the hero's journey, that everyone can relate to, or at least have some elements from in their own life. So at a deep core, we as humans share a lot of the same experiences in life, and that's why also these similar dreams seem to show up.
Well, another way I would like to, because you are a dream expert, I would like to have your view on the following. How do you compare, if you want to, dream analysis and your fantastic method of dream guidance with, let's say, transcendental meditation, with the power of hypnosis, the technique of hypnosis to find answers, with psychedelic drugs and getting into, another state of consciousness, because that is actually the common denominator, that you are there, yet you are differently there with a different kind of vibe, energy, frequency. How would you compare these? I would just say these 4 points of accessing potential answers to pertinent questions.
Yeah, I think that what they have in common is that we can different ways of imagining it, but they reach different states of consciousness. And where we started, like the dream is a different state of consciousness, and it's also a world. And this world we are sinking into at night, but actually coexists right now. So if we start daydreaming or fantasizing, this dreaming consciousness comes up, or we merge a little bit with it. If you take a plant medicine, a psychedelic, you get transported right away into another world. You probably still know somewhat that you're here, but also not always. And you're also in another world. So we seem to have different states of consciousness coexisting, or we have different frequencies coexisting, or we have different worlds coexisting. And in these different worlds are different states of intelligence, different insights, different higher and lower states of awareness, and but also different states of being, like the angry cab driver or the happy singer. And they probably bring some state of consciousness to our life that would be helpful. So all these methods try to engage with these different worlds or different states of consciousness in order for for it to be a little bit more porous, so that we open up to the flow of life, and that life can flow through us and through us into the world, and so we become transparent to the flow of life that manifests in a myriad of different worlds, and we're just living in this one world. And one of the mistakes is that we think that this is the only world, despite the fact that we experientially know, hey, at night I'm living in another world. And if you take a plant medicine, you will see pretty quickly that there are other worlds as well. So, and that is so important, because then we can have relationships with ancestors, beings in the other world, and just the flow of life can flow through us. And then we feel in the flow of life, and we feel that there's purpose and meaning, and we feel alive. And I think that's what we really are after.
Yes, absolutely. Feeling alive and getting those emotions. And this is why, for example, drug addiction is quite profuse, especially in our very complex world, because people want to mood shift. Okay. But with all due respect and without judging, but most people want to mood shift like that. And without real intention, apart from I just want to feel differently. So they have they have alcohol, they smoke pot, they eat chocolate or whatever, anything to shift their mood, but it doesn't really resolve whatever they want to shift away with. On the other hand, when you maybe talk to this kind of people and offer them, well, you can mood shift, but in a more proactive and positive way, because you also find answers, not just, a dopamine kick, which gives you like the biggest low the next day when you're on cold turkey. You can be smart about mood shifting. Okay. It takes maybe a bit of effort, maybe a bit of aperture, reading, practicing, what have you, but it might be a lot more sustainable, less costly, and certainly on a physical level, also less destructive.
I totally agree. And the classic idea of Carl Jung is that we access, for example, in drinking, we try to have a spiritual experience. We call it also spirits. And so
I was just going to say, this is why they're called spirits.
and we're entering that other world, but we don't truly open up enough that other world can ongoingly flow through us. So we need again this tool, drinking, to get there. But like you say, if we do some practices, dream work or meditation or living your life, have a purpose, this will flow through you, and your desire to drink will decrease significantly. And probably Jung thinks it's the only cure to alcoholism if you have a life of meaning and purpose, which is just that this flows through you automatically. And yeah, so this is definitely a better way. It's like an failed initiation. You get initiated in another world, but it doesn't close.
Yeah.
You don't bring the real insights back into this world. You just loop in the same, on a certain moment, unhelpful pattern, and then
it just loops, and you're like, you're not getting out of it. And plus it's where you're too drunk to even kind of realize whatever the spirit in a liquid form may tell the spirit in a non-liquid form for you to get as a message. And that actually brings me to a very a thought in my mind, and that is about using this dream work you suggest to really kind of try to get out of deep issues like addiction. Let's take the alcoholism. All right. I wonder whether starting to work with my dream, and if, let's say, one is an alcoholic, I sit down and do my ritual and say, okay, I want to find the answers. How can I break the circuit of turning to alcohol when I feel stressed? I don't know whether this is already not focused enough, too many questions in one. I don't know. But how is that a tool that you would say is strong enough to fight serious addiction of an alcoholic? Or do you think that, yeah, it may help, but you know what, for this, and you are, a therapist yourself, maybe you want to look at different methods?
Well, if you're really heavily addicted, you need a whole subset of activities to stay sober. And it is interesting that you bring it up. I will next week again work here in Utah with a very famous addiction clinic on with their residents, and of course they do their thing there, all the steps that they need to do. But one of the questions that we ask, and everyone finds their own question, but is, what is one thing I can do to break this addiction? How can I find meaning? How can I build up my self-esteem again? There's so many questions that very often are present, and the dream can help and provide a additional building block in their recovery or their journey to become sober again. And the dream this is exactly what the dream would love to help with. If you're in trouble and you really want to get better, the dream will help. There's no, you see amazing responses.
Beautiful. No, I think this is very, very powerful, Machiel. And I think if I was in that situation, the first thing I would ask myself, so what's the trigger? What got me into this, first kind of glass of wine, which I could have also not taken? What got me into this? And then see whether I'm being confronted with this trigger over and over again when I'm in that kind of I'm beside myself mode, and I can't help my own behavior, and I'm just watching my physical movements, knowing it's wrong, but I'm still doing it.
It's a beautiful question. It's what I call a diagnostic question. It's a question about asking about what is my wound, because once you know your wound, you can start working on it. If you don't know what your wound is, yeah, that's problematic. Oh, the old idea is only the wound heals, and therefore the wound is the healer, and therefore you need to tend to the wound. So it would be a marvelous first question on the journey of recovery. What is my trigger? And then, because addiction is so complex, you will have a lot of work to do around it, and the dream is just one supportive way of helping you on this journey.
You know what? I have a couple more questions, if you indulge me. One thing is about going back and a little bit less deep at this point is remembering dreams, because this is really a bit of a frustration. Okay, so I am a spiritual person I feel before I think kind of thing. I mean, I have very strong senses. Yet I find it really hard to remember my dream. And then there is my husband, who is, of course, he's not spiritual necessarily, but, so he's not the kind of, okay, everything's about energy and what I tend to do. All right. He remembers every freaking dream he has. Breakfast table. Oh, I have to tell you my dream. I'm like, how can it be, Machiel? Why is it? Okay. As I said, I'm blonde. Fair enough. But how come that some people really dream almost lucidly, enjoy their dreaming or don't? But most importantly, they remember it. And then, despite remembering it even an hour after, don't really use it as a tool, maybe because they don't need to. But what about it that some people really tend to remember most of them and others not?
Yes, well, it's a great question, and one of the things, for example, to ponder with your husband is maybe your husband is actually really in touch with his sense of purpose, which would be a form of living a spiritual life, even if you wouldn't acknowledge that.
That means I have no purpose. This is what you're trying to say.
No.
I'm still looking for my purpose.
No. But it is that he maybe is really in touch with his instincts, his purpose. He's very imaginative, and those are usually qualities that people seem to remember their dreams. Then another point is that some people seem to be more prone to dream recall. They also have a little bit to do with how deep a person sleeps, and their sleep pattern. So that could be a difference between you and your husband.
So who the deeper the sleep, the less the dreaming, right? Because
yeah, exactly. And for example, people that sleep very deep also tend to have fewer lucid dreams in which you know that you're dreaming. And the other thing is, and it's for everyone, they can practice it, is dream recall usually gets stimulated by showing interest in dreaming. You might all have this, but have a notebook and a pen next to your bed. Talk to your dream. Say, hey, dream, I would love to have a dream. And if you come tonight, I'll write you down tomorrow morning. And immediately upon waking, write it down. Because our short-term memory comes back online when we wake up. So that's why these dreams evaporate. Write it down, even if it's, I feel a pit in my stomach, or I feel elated in the chest. And then dreams seem to re-engage, and then people have 2, 3, 4 dreams a week, and that gives a lot of interesting material to work with.
Yes, no, and I have to say, apart from this being a great book to read and a fantastic manual, it actually did shift my own recall patterns. So dream recall, this is really, really good. So I do remember more because it is more intention and serious interest. And I call my dream world my dream soul. So I always ask my dream soul, hey, listen, this and that is my question for tonight. And then the weirdest dreams come up, and they're definitely not to be recorded and put out on Mentor TV, but I tell you afterwards if you're interested. One of the last ones to ask you, and that is about what are the main pitfalls, of doing this method. So one thing is, look, these are your possibilities, but if you had to put small print on, say, what is the small print you should still keep in mind if you want to use dream guidance?
It has to do with you don't need to even believe this, but you need to have and be open to it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Approach it that way, because that allows you to be open, and then do really the steps. So don't think this is some form of a genie that is a wish-fulfilling spirit that gives you whatever you want. No, it helps you with your life path, and so ask questions that are relevant to your life path. Take some time. It hinges on take some time to figure out the question you want to ask, phrase it in a good way, one question at a time, open-ended. And then the other part is it's in the ritual. And as we said, it's not what ritual, but that the dream can feel that you're really wanting to know, that you're really approaching it with some respect. that you put in some time, even if you think, gosh, this is the silliest thing I've ever heard, but I'm going to spend 15 minutes on this, and that just to see if it works. And that those two things or three things are really both the pitfalls as the elements that makes this successful. And then write it down in the morning. Maybe it's the fourth. Write it down, and even if you don't understand it or you think this is totally weird, keep it, work on it. Maybe you share it with someone. Maybe the answer comes through a coincidence in the day. Life is starting to conspire with you to give you the answer, and those are some pitfalls.
Yeah, no, I think the resilience there, and to not just, give up straight away, or, maybe the first, like with me, the first 2 nights were great. The third one was a void. And you could have said, okay, fine, whatever. The novelty wore off. Third night, nothing happened. And what I loved also as a business person about your approach in a totally different sector, of course, is this is more or less your process is also very similar to how I approach my potential investments in companies. So the synthesis of this is like I analyze, I strategize, then I exercise, and then I monetize. All right. So these are just now words out there, but if you think about it, okay, what am I going to ask? What is most pivotal in this moment? That is kind of like the analysis of yourself. Then you strategize, you construct your question, you do it open-ended, you do it focused, you do it, with really just one intention. Then you exercise, you actually go to bed with your ritual, you put in act, you execute the process of sleeping and then dreaming and then writing down, and then you monetize, i.e. you are a step further. Be it, oh my God, I have to ask more questions, different questions, deeper questions, or I have the answer, thank you very much, I can move on.
Beautiful. And some thoughts that come also to me is this method indeed can be used for personal development, dealing with an addiction. But recently, I worked here in the US with the largest sports brand in the world, where they sent their creative team for 3 days to work on this and ask, how can we improve this product? How can I be a better manager? So it's very applicable to the business world. And to make it in a certain form, use your example, is if you would you go through this process, and if you could even ask the dream, how does it look like for me to invest in this company? But what the dream would want from you is that you first do your homework. So it's not like, oh, here's a company, I ask the dream the question, then it doesn't work yet. So that would be a pitfall. You do your homework, and maybe at the end you're convinced that this works, no problem. Or you have a question, and then you could say, what do I not see in this investment, or what should I be aware of? And whatever question remains at the end, and the dream will answer that. And again, a pitfall is you have to do your homework first, because the dream doesn't foster codependence. However, it also helps with business and investments and any part that's really relevant to life.
Yeah, I so get that because it always is, if you talk about investing into a company, you're investing in people at the end of the day. So again, it's just a construct or construction of people building something somewhere where you're basically entering with certain intentions or not. And I think you can really dig quite a few answers. Machiel, this is great. Thank you so much. Dream guidance. Well, definitely the book I work. But I tend to, so I was already asked, can I have your book? And I said, no, you have to buy it. I'm not lending this one to anybody because, I've got very private things written down here as well. Excellent book. Machiel, thank you so much for being with us here on Mentor TV. You really have something to mentor, and I want the world to dip into this other side, which is part of us. to really find the answers to our, 90% conscious life.
Thank you, Patricia. And it's a delight to be with a dream friend in this dream space. And I loved your inquisitiveness and your line of questions. So it has been a true pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Dream Team, thank you also, dear Mentoring TV community, to have shared with us again, this time, all the insights by Machiel Klerk. Dream guidance, connecting to the soul through dream incubation. You can find him on the internet, on YouTube, and most importantly, it is fantastic what he found, which is the Jung Platform. And well, what can I say? C.G. Jung, together with Freud, they are really the funding stones of trying to, understand what we are all about. And it is not necessarily willpower. It really is most of the time about our emotions, sensations, the subconscious, everything that doesn't really make part in our very modern world. See you next time. Until then, stay curious. Bye.